morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our weekly review of how religion impacts humanity. This week's headlines. Female Afghan judges are being hunted by the murderers they convicted. A Canadian is accused of being the voice behind the violence in Islamic State videos. 216,000 children were victims of clergy, according to a French church abuse inquiry. On the day of remembrance, churches confront their role in Indigenous boarding schools. Magdalene Laundry survivors tell how they feel forgotten about again, a year on from the historic event. Abortions rights marches have taken place. Thousands have attended rallies across the USA. A Phoenix mother gunned down her 2-year-old daughter and critically wounded her 6-year-old son in the hope that they could go to heaven. A US man sues a psychic who promised to remove his ex-girlfriend's curse. A lesbian nun movie has been released to cries of blasphemy. The UK government introducing a ban on inhumane conversion practices states they must avoid exemptions. The Holy Ghost took over during a church service in Nigeria. Hindus drink cow's urine on camera. And Australian religious schools will lose the right to hire or fire based on sexuality. So, they were the trailblazers of women's rights in Afghanistan. They were the staunch defenders of the law, seeking justice for their country's most marginalized. But now, more than 220 female Afghan judges are in hiding due to fear of retribution under Taliban rule. 6 former female judges spoke to the BBC from secret locations across Afghanistan. In the past 20 years, 270 women have sat as judges in Afghanistan, and they were some of the most powerful and prominent women in the country and are now known public figures. Travelling by car out of the city, I wore a burqa so no one would recognise me. Fortunately, we made it past all the Taliban checkpoints. Shortly after she left, her neighbours texted her to say several members of the Taliban had arrived at her old house. Mazuma, not her real name, says that as soon as they described the men, she knew who was looking for her. Several months ago, prior to the Taliban takeover, Mazuma was ruling over a case investigating a member of the group for brutally murdering his wife. Upon finding him guilty, Mazuma sentenced the man to 20 years in prison. I can still see the image of that young woman in my mind. It was a brutal crime, says Mazuma. After the case was over, the criminal approached me and said, "When I get out of prison, I will do to you what I did to my wife." At the time, I didn't take him seriously, but since the Taliban took power, he has called me many times and said he has taken all of my information from the court offices. He told me, "I will find you and have my revenge." A Canadian citizen who allegedly narrated the violent propaganda videos for the Islamic State group has been charged in the USA. Saudi-born Mohammed Khalifa is accused of being the voice behind the violence by providing English narration on some 15 videos. Many of them encouraged supporters to join IS, while some showed the brutal execution of prisoners and hostages. If convicted, the 38-year-old could face life in prison. Mr. Khalifa will appear before a US court next week on charges of providing material support to a terrorist organization resulting in death. He denies the charges. Prosecutors say he was also an IS fighter, and during one conflict, shortly before being captured, threw a grenade at opposing forces. Mohammed Khalifa was captured in January 2019 during a firefight between IS and the Syrian Democratic Forces, a US-backed, Kurdish-led militia which spearheaded the fight against IS in northwest Syria. He was later handed over to the FBI. In a newspaper interview after his capture, he said he had been a low-level fighter and just the voice of ISIS. He insisted that he had played no role in filming or carrying out the gruesome scenes he narrated. And now for our Roman Catholic correspondent, Jason Sylvester's report.
Hello, I'm Jason Sylvester, aka Diogenes of Mayberry, bringing you this week's Catholic Report. This week's big story is the stunning revelation in France where 3,000 priests and other church employees reportedly abused up to 330,000 children over the past several decades. Unlike all the other reports that have come out in recent years, this one was initiated by the church, a sign that at least the French clerics are taking the situation seriously and not attempting to cover it up. On Wednesday, Pope Francis issued a statement of shame, and the president of the Conference of Bishops of France, de Moulin-Beaufort, said on Tuesday, "We are appalled," and so are the rest of us. Somewhat bafflingly, the Church Commission has asked the French state to help compensate victims, notably in cases that are too old to prosecute. For an organization that has criminally obstructed justice for decades and has exceptionally deep pockets, it is rather galling to see the Church ask the French taxpayer to help foot the bill for their misdeeds. In other news, the ongoing residential school tragedy in Canada sees more communities launching investigations for bodies, including in this reporter's hometown. On September 30th, Canada observed its National Day for Truth and Reconciliation regarding the situation as a day to reflect on the shameful history of assimilation that was inflicted on the First Nations people. Adding insult to injury is the seeming impunity that the church-run schools got away with for decades. How thousands of children could be disappeared and no one was held accountable is baffling. A reckoning is long overdue and eagerly awaited. In other news of Catholics acting badly, Police Services Northern Ireland has launched an investigation into the Magdalene Laundries, where unwed pregnant women were shipped off to endure barbaric treatment and forced into slave labor. More than 14,000 women went through the doors of mother and baby homes between 1922 and 1990, where women were mistreated, held against their will, and forced to give up their children to adoption. Why it's taken so long for the investigation is anyone's guess, since a movie that documented all this abuse is 20 years old and the laundries themselves were closed 30 years ago. Thank you for watching, and if you like my reports, please check out my social media links and follow for more content. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Jason. Tens of thousands of people have marched at rallies across all 50 US states in support of abortion rights. They have been galvanized in opposition to a new Texas law that severely limits access to abortions in the state. Pro-choice supporters across the country fear that constitutional rights may be rolled back. In the coming months, the Supreme Court is set to hear a case that could overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision that legalized abortion nationwide. Meanwhile, women seeking abortions have had to travel from Texas to another state, and Latest news, a federal judge has stopped the Texan law, saying it is unconstitutional. Texas has announced it will appeal. See the rallies here. A Phoenix mother gunned down her 2-year-old daughter and critically wounded her 6-year-old son in hopes they could go to heaven, police said Thursday. Esther Kalijas, 24, called her husband and other family members on Monday to say she had shot the children. Here is another video.
I just can't imagine.
Shock still lingering in South Phoenix after 2 kids were shot, one killed allegedly by the 24-year-old mother. The 2-year-old identified as Esperanza Isidro.
Yeah, that kind of hurt my feelings because, I mean, it's a baby, you know? Both of them were babies.
Kara Wood lives 2 houses from this home near 8th Place and Broadway, where police allege a mother hurt her own children. Phoenix police responded to the home shortly before noon Monday. Officers found kids with gunshot wounds. The children were taken to a hospital in critical condition, but Sally, the 2-year-old, later died.
Pues los niños los quería, se miraba, pues los traía bien los niños.
Margarita de la Cruz lives on the same block. She talked to the mother and her 2 children last week. She says the kids look happy and were well dressed. No indication that something was wrong.
Solamente ella sabe lo que estaría pasando, pobrecita.
Other neighbors off camera said the mother was dealing with some mental health issues, but police have not given any indication or motive as to why the mom may have done this. Neighbors also said they have seen police officers at the home in the past.
Just can't imagine what would be going through her mind.
Other neighbors off camera said the mother was dealing with some mental health issues, but police have not given any indication or motive as to why mom may have done this. Phoenix police confirming they were at the family home on September 14 after the husband told police he was concerned for the well-being of his wife and kids. The woman was not home, but officers eventually talked to her over the phone, and she told them that she and the kids were okay. At this time, it's unclear what charges the mother will face. We know the 6-year-old remains in critical condition. In South Phoenix, Adriana Loya, 12 News.
A California man is suing a psychic who, he says, falsely claimed she could remove a curse put on his marriage by a witch hired by his ex-girlfriend. Maura Restrepo said Sophia Adams promised she could save his marriage if he paid $5,100 to exorcise the spell, according to a fraud suit filed with the Torrance Superior Court. Ms. Adams allegedly told Mr. Restrepo he and his family would be unhappy and in danger if the curse was not lifted. He is now seeking $25,000 in damages. Included among several other allegations made by Mr. Restrepo are charges of negligence, civil conspiracy, and both intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Mr. Restrepo said he contacted Ms. Adams after searching for psychics on Google. Ms. Adams' website bills her as a psychic love specialist and PhD life coach, which the suit claims made plaintiff more confident that he was speaking with a professional that could help him. During the session, Ms. Adams read his tarot cards and told him he had mala suerte, or bad luck, placed on him by a witch hired by his ex-girlfriend, and unless the curse was removed, it would ruin Mr. Restrepo, his children, and his marriage, the court papers say. A lesbian nun movie has been released to cries of, unsurprisingly, blasphemy. See this report from Atheist Republic.
Blasphemous lesbian nun movie protested by Catholics in New York City. Protesters showed up to the screening of the film Benedetta on September 26th at the 59th New York Film Festival premiere of the film. The film reveals the life of a 17th century Tuscany nun, Benedetta Carlini, who claimed to have visions of Christ and had sexual relations with another nun. Armed with megaphones, banners, and placards, members of the American Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family, and Property branded Benedetta as a blasphemous lesbian movie. Christian Blauvelt, managing editor of IndieWire, said that the protesters were upset about the film's portrayal of nuns and Catholicism. The New York Film Festival calls the film a delirious, erotic, and violent melodrama told with the boundless spirit for scandal and unabashedly courts blasphemy as it unfolds its tale of religious hypocrisy.
Is that not the best sales ever? Like, you should just hire this guy to just write. Like, do they not know how they're marketing this movie? Do they not
I know,
understand?
right? I was like,
Yeah.
Someone said blasphemous lesbian movie. I am watching.
Boris Johnson has proposed that the ban on inhumane conversion practices, the practices that attempt to de-gay people, must avoid exemptions for religious settings and consenting adults, a major report has warned. Signed by leading lawyers, LGBT plus campaigners and cross-party MPs, it urges swift and immediate action from the government after repeated delays to avoid further lives being damaged and lost. A warning. The next video is disgusting. It's Hindus drinking cow urine.
هذا عبس هلبس يقول عبس هطيب يقولون كورونا ماشي كورونا يكذبون عليكم والله قوام شنو هذا عالي شنو هذا غسول الكبد وغسول كل الامراض الله جعل من بولها دواء هذه عطى الله سبحانه يا هلا.
Finally, there's a bit of good news from Australia, where religious schools are to lose the right to hire or fire based on a person's sexuality. This is another clip from
proposed law, religious schools to lose right to fire based on sexuality. Religious schools and organizations in the Australian state of Victoria may soon be prohibited from not hiring or terminating based on the applicant's gender identity, sexual orientation, or marital status. On September 16th, the Victorian Labour Party in Australia proposed a new law that would end this discriminatory practice. Currently, religious organizations are free to end or deny employment to LGBT people simply because of their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Wow.
A Christian advocacy group, the Australian Christian Lobby, or ACL, has expressed that the proposal is, quote, an attack on people of faith. Mark Spencer, the ACL's public policy director, asked, why is the government trying to dictate to a Christian school who it can employ or in what role?
How is it that this is still a thing, though?
You always do this.
Free Thought Hour, my live Q&A show, will be starting in a few minutes, so stay tuned on this channel and come and ask some questions. We will be back with our weekly news review on all our platforms at the same time next week. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and set the notifications, etc. Thank you for watching.